When our kingdom fell, enemy soldiers dragged us princesses from the blood-soaked throne room. As they reached for me, my sister shoved me forward like broken tribute. Let her bear the shame, she thought. But fate laughed. The enemy prince claimed me as his jeweled concubine. While she rotted in slave pits, branded and broken, years of venom fermented in her soul, she slit my throat in moonlight, and woke chained beside me in the past. This time, she sprinted toward the soldiers, a sacrificial panther. Sister, her laugh was poison. This time the concubine's silk will be mine. She never knew, I crave no prince's bed. With royal blood burning in my veins, I'll seize the throne that crushed us, or drown empires in fire. Thank you for watching. Your support keeps these stories coming. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more captivating tales. What story should we tell next? Let us know below. Chapter 1. A blood-stained moon rose into the sky. The distant cries of agony gradually fell silent. All the men had been slaughtered, and the only survivors were the women in the tents. At that moment, every beautiful face was filled with endless despair and fear. Once upon a time, these were the most noble princesses in the palace. Yet now, our fathers and brothers had been slaughtered by the Shuangwen cavalry. Our hands were shackled, and we were thrown into tents like a flock of lambs awaiting slaughter. The tent curtains were torn open, and several Shuangwen soldiers walked in. They were all burly, with bulging muscles, reeking of blood, and grinning lewdly. Finally, we get to taste the flavor of southern Tang noblewomen. There are several princesses among them. I wonder if their cries will be more seductive than those of ordinary women. The girls all began to cry in fear. Some called out for their parents, while others tried to take their own lives. In the chaos, a voice spoke up eagerly. Gentlemen, I will go with you. The speaker was my younger sister, Yu-He. I immediately realized that she had been reborn. Just like me. In my previous life, the scene was the same. Shuangwen soldiers were selecting women in the tents to take away and enjoy. At that time, Yu-He had been desperately trying to hide in the back, pushing others forward. As an 8-year-old girl was about to be pushed to the front, I stood up to protect her. If you're going to take someone, take me instead. Thus, I was dragged out of the tent by the soldiers, while the other sisters escaped unharmed. As I was leaving the tent, I heard Yu-He patting her chest in relief. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. It was Yu-Su who died. Other girls protested. Yu-Su risked her life to save us. As princesses, where is your sense of responsibility? Yu-He's angry voice rang out. How can you compare me to Yu-Su? I am the only daughter of the emperor and empress. She is just a lowly palace maid's daughter. How dare you compare her to me? Yu-He thought I was doomed. But she didn't expect that when the soldiers dragged me into the forest, they happened to encounter the young prince of the Shuangwen tribe, Murong Jin, who was on patrol. Murong Jin took a liking to me. He brought me back to his tent, and after a night of favor, I became his concubine. He loved me very much and immediately made me his secondary wife upon returning to the Shuangwen tribe. The Shuangwen king was already old, and Murong Jin was the most powerful man in the western regions. Not to mention his towering height and striking good looks. He was the dream of countless women. Once he ascended the throne, I would be the favored concubine, showered with endless affection. As for Yu-He, she became a slave like the other noble women, eating the same feed as horses and working from dawn till dusk with hands covered in blisters. Yu-He was the empress's only daughter and had never endured such suffering. Driven by intense hatred, she killed me when I went to visit the slaves. Originally, if she hadn't killed me, I would have rescued them all that time. Fortunately, in this life, we have all been reborn. Yu-He joyfully followed the Shuangwen soldiers away. Before leaving, she whispered silently in my ear, Open your eyes and watch. I will be more favored than you. Yuhi's judgment was correct. Just like in the previous life, the young master of the Qiangrong tribe came to inspect the troops and discovered Yuhi being dragged by the soldiers. Yuhi's eyes were filled with tears. Her black hair disheveled, exuding the broken beauty of a princess of a fallen kingdom. Mao Rongjin immediately stopped the soldiers. He picked up Yuhi and placed her on his horse, then returned to the tent. For the next 3 days, Murongjin spent every night with Yuhi. Yuhi imitated me to win Murongjin's favor. In my previous life, after marrying Murongjin, I never once smiled. Murongjin tried every trick in the book to make me smile, even going so far as to play the foolish game of lighting beacon fires to deceive the feudal lords. But my heart was consumed by grief for my fallen kingdom, and I could not muster even a hint of joy. In this life, Yuhi followed my example and wore a constant expression of sorrow. Murongjin became even more obsessed. He declared that anyone who could make Princess Yuhi smile would be rewarded with 10,000 taels of gold. A month later, we arrived in Qiangrong. The once noble ladies of prominent families had all become the lowest slaves in the palace. The task I was assigned was the least arduous, serving tea as a palace maid, bringing tea and water to Murongjin. One day, I bowed my head, serving tea to Murongjin and the Princess Yuhi by her side. As I offered the tea to Yuhi, she pretended to take the teacup from my hands, but suddenly let go. The teacup fell, and the scalding hot tea spilled all over her skirt. Yuhi cried out in pain, and Murongjin's expression turned icy. "Bring someone," he said. "Drag the slave away to feed the dogs." Everyone knew that Murongjin, the young master of the Qiangrong tribe, was unpredictable, cruel, and brutal. In my previous life, he was willing to spend 10,000 taels of gold for a single smile from me. In this life, he sought my death without a word. Before I could speak, Yuhi had already knelt down. She spoke softly. "This is my fellow countrywoman from the southern Tang dynasty. Though she may be clumsy, please spare her life for my sake." Murongjin's expression remained cold. After a long pause, he said, "Since Yuhi is pleading for you, you shall be exiled to the stables." Yuhi smiled at me. I knew she was doing this on purpose. Yuhi didn't want me to serve by Murongjin's side. She feared I might find an opportunity to seduce him. But she also didn't want me to die so soon. After all, she wanted me to witness her ascension to the position of imperial concubine. Exiling me to the stables was part of her plan. After all, in her previous life, she had been assigned to feed the horses in the stables. This task was extremely arduous, as the Qiangrong horses were known for their fierce temperaments and were prone to kicking people. Yuhi, to prevent the horses from kicking her, had to feed them less hay. As a result, a foal starved to death after a month. That foal was the Qiangrong princess's snow-white dragon foal. When the truth came out, the Qiangrong princess beat her severely and disfigured her face. Later, when Murongjin came to the stable with me to select horses, he ordered the disfigured Yuhi to serve as a stool for me to mount and dismount. The last thread of sanity snapped in Yuhi's mind. She was the only legitimate princess of the southern Tang dynasty. And from childhood, I had been her sole attendant. Now I was high and mighty. While she was a lowly slave, how could she bear it? Thus, Yuhi charged forward and thrust the horse spur into my throat. "Empress! I'll make you empress." In this new life, our positions had reversed as she had wished. She became Murongjin's concubine, while I became a horse slave. Once you've starved the snow dragon foal to death, you'll taste the pain of being beaten by a princess until your skin is torn to shreds. Yuhi left those words behind and abandoned me in the stable. The horse closest to me was covered in snow-white fur, stamping its hooves and tossing its head, its nostrils flaring with heavy breaths. I immediately knew this was the princess's snow dragon foal. The snow dragon foal had inherited the wild nature of its wild horse ancestors and was extremely difficult to tame. Yuhi was certain I would die at the princess's hands. But she didn't know that my mother had once been a horse trainer in the imperial stables. Taming horses was the simplest thing in the world to me. By the second month of training the snow dragon foal, Yuhi returned to the stable. By then, she had become the most favored concubine by Mu Rongjin's side. Qiangrong women were generally bold and vibrant, while we women of the southern Tang were as delicate as jade and as soft as silk. Gentle and graceful. Mu Rongjin naturally found this fresh and appealing. Not to mention that Yuhi was indeed beautiful. She had been pampered by the emperor and empress since childhood, bathing daily in rosewater and steaming with jasmine oil, resulting in skin smoother than jade. Qiangrong's slaves eagerly brought her a soft stool, and she smiled as she sat down before me. "Come, massage my feet." I merely hesitated for a moment, and Yuhi's expression hardened. Instantly, the attendant by her side struck me hard with a horsewhip. The girl who worked with me in the stable ran over crying. "Trying to protect me, we're sisters. Why is Princess Yuhi treating you like this?" Before she could finish, she too was struck across the back with a horsewhip. This girl was the youngest daughter of a scholarly official, only 13 years old, with a delicate constitution. Even at home, she required daily doses of medicine. How could she endure such a blow? She fainted instantly. I shielded the unconscious girl and approached Princess Yuhua. The princess ordered me to massage her feet, so I did as I was told. Is the pressure appropriate? If it's not, the princess may strike or scold me. There's no need to take it out on others. Yuhi finally smiled seductively. She lifted my chin with the back of her foot and whispered in a voice only she and I could hear. "How about it, sister? In another life, you were indeed destined to serve me. In the previous life, Mu Rongjin had instructed Yuhi, who was a slave, to serve as my stool." This might be the greatest pain in Yuhi's heart. How could she accept that I, whom she had once looked down upon and trampled on, had turned the tables and become her master, while she was doomed to be a slave forever? In another lifetime, she naturally wanted to take her revenge on me. But, I whispered, the princess is angry with me. Wanting to take revenge is only natural. But the princess eats the people's food in times of danger. She should also bear the responsibilities of a princess. Why don't you think about who our true enemy is? Yuhi scoffed. She said, "Do I not know that if it weren't for the Qiangrong attacking the southern Tang, I wouldn't have lost my life of silk and rice and ended up here eating sand? But you, Su, our father is dead. Our elder brother is dead. The general is dead. And the commander of the imperial guards is also dead. Those men couldn't protect the kingdom, and I'm just a little princess. I can barely protect myself. If our father and mother were still alive, they would only want me to be happy. But you, I've taken your position as a concubine. Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "Actually, I don't really hate Yuhi. At least not in this matter. Being the concubine of Mu Rongjin isn't necessarily a good thing. In my previous life, Mu Rongjin favored me for 3 months, then married the daughters of various tribes from the western regions. He was the young master of the Qiangrong tribe. He couldn't possibly marry just one woman. To compete for the position of main consort, the noble women of the Qiangrong tribe fought to the death. Behind them were the various factions of the 16 tribes of the western regions, intertwined and unwilling to yield. In comparison, the princess of the southern Tang, whose country had already fallen, had no support from her maternal clan. Yet she happened to have Mu Rongjin's favor. This was the bane of all the concubines. In my previous life, even if Yuhi hadn't killed me, I would have died within a month from the poison of the Xusha tribe and the poisonous insects of the Guyu kingdom. But Yuhi refused to believe any of this. She lowered her head and stared at my face. "You worthless slut. You've inherited your concubine mother's 3 parts of fox-like beauty. Although Jin only loves me now. If he ever develops feelings for you, I'll be in trouble. He shouted loudly. Bring someone. Slash her face to pieces, leave no good spot intact. Soon. The cold blade touched my face. I closed my eyes and prayed in my heart. It's coming. It should be here soon. The first blade was about to cut down. But at that very moment, a black stallion charged in, with a woman in vibrant red robes atop it. Princess Mu Rongzhu of the Qiangrong tribe has arrived. I finally waited for her. Upon hearing the servant's announcement, Yuhi's expression suddenly changed. Whether in her past life or this one, Yuhi had always feared this Qiangrong princess. Even now, as the most favored concubine of Mu Rongjin, Mu Rongzhu remained someone she dared not offend. After all, Mu Rongzhu's mother had been killed by Mu Rongjin's mother years ago. Even now, despite Mu Rongjin's status as the young master, Mu Rongzhu never showed him any respect. To avoid encountering Mu Rongzhu, Yuhi quickly stood up and left through the side door. As she left, she couldn't help but glance at me with a smile. The meaning was clear, the princess's torment was about to begin. After all, earlier in the stable, Yuhi hadn't seen the snow-white foal. It must have been killed by me. At that moment, the princess strode in, surveyed the area, and upon not finding the snow-white foal, her expression immediately darkened. Where is the stable hand? I was immediately grabbed by the attendants and thrown before the princess. Mu Rongzhu looked down at me. Are you from the southern Tang? I bowed my head, yes. Where is my princess's snow-white foal? I said. I released it into the wild. Morning Pearl heard this and her eyes widened. You released it? She never expected a slave to have such audacity. Morning Pearl was so angry her voice trembled. This snow dragon foal was purchased by this princess for 6,000 taels of silver. You released it? Who gave you the audacity? The attendants looked at me with pity. They all believed I was doomed. Lifting my head, my expression remained utterly calm. Please follow me. Princess. Perhaps they had never seen a slave commit such a grave offense yet remain so composed. Mu Rongzhu actually followed me to the wilderness. Your Highness. The snow-white foal was bred from wild horses. Its wild nature is untamable. If kept in a stable, it will refuse to eat or drink and will die within half a month. The only way to keep it alive is to release it into the wild. Mongolian Zhu laughed in anger. So I spent 6,000 taels of silver just to have you release it? Do you think you won't live long enough to reap the rewards in your next life? Before she could finish speaking, I placed my finger to my lips and blew a long whistle. In moments, a snow-white horse appeared at the horizon. The princess froze. It was her snow-white stallion. The snow-white stallion galloped toward me, and I jumped onto its back. Giddy up! We circled the grassland 3 times, and I gave commands, which the snow-white stallion followed perfectly. Mu Rongzhu's eyes grew wider and wider. After 3 laps, I pulled the reins tight in front of Mu Rongzhu, dismounted, and bowed respectfully. The horse is now well trained. The princess may ride it at will. Mu Rongzhu's gaze toward me was already completely different from before. What is your status in the southern Tang dynasty? I am Chu Yusu. Mongolian Zhu narrowed her eyes slightly. You're actually a princess. Thus, Mongolian Zhu knew immediately from my name that I was of royal blood. You seem to be quite skilled at riding, Mongolian Zhu said casually. Dare you race me? I accept. A quarter of an hour later, we both dismounted, drenched in sweat. Mongolian Zhu panted. You actually beat me. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. Princess Mu Rong. Your horsemanship is exceptional. I won with great difficulty. Mu Rongzhu fell silent for a moment before smiling. Among the 16 tribes of the western regions, you are the only one who dared to defeat this princess. Tomorrow, bring the snow dragon foal and wait here for me. Over the next half-month, Mu Rongzhu and I raced 10 times, with each of us winning some and losing some. As a reward, she gave me medicine, food, and even gold and silver. I distributed it among the other enslaved girls. Thank you for your kindness, Princess Murong. Murongzhu lifted my face with her horsewhip. The favors I can bestow upon you are far greater than these. Chu Yusu, do you want to be my brother's concubine? For a female slave, this was the best opportunity. After all, female slaves did the hardest work every day, ate stale food, and were often beaten and scolded by their masters. Even an unloved concubine had servants, beautiful clothes, and exquisite food. Mao Rongzhu expected me to kneel in astonishment and express my gratitude. But I remained calm and said, I don't want it. Mao Rongzhu's expression turned extremely puzzled. Then what do you want? I looked at Mao Rongzhu. The sky and clouds of the grasslands were reflected in each other's eyes. After a long time, I spoke in a voice only she could hear. I want to assist the princess. At first, Mu Rongzhu did not understand what I was saying. But in an instant, her expression changed. She had understood. Ridiculous! She scolded me harshly, but my expression remained unchanged. In my heart, I harbored a firm resolve this lifetime. Mu Rongzhu was someone I absolutely had to win over. After arriving in Qiangrong, I realized that most of Murongjin's brothers were mediocre. Yet he had such an outstanding sister. Murongzhu came from an extremely noble background. Being the only daughter of the king of Qiangrong and the eldest princess of the Goyu kingdom, she had grown up in the military with her grandfather. Familiar with the classics of Central Plains, she could wield a sword in battle and read and interpret texts with ease. Unfortunately, in my previous life, as the favored concubine of Murongjin, no matter how I tried to be kind to Murongzhu, she always believed I was a spy sent by her brother and refused to open her heart to me. But in this life, I am still a slave without any allegiance. Gaining Murongjin's favor is a dead-end path. Only by aligning myself with Murongzhu can I hope to restore our kingdom. Princess Murong, in terms of lineage and talent, you are no less than your brother Murongjin. You are the granddaughter of the king of the Guiwei kingdom and the most elite cavalry in the western regions. A dowry given by your maternal grandfather to your mother. However, since your mother was murdered, this cavalry has fallen into Murongjin's hands. In a few years, Murongjin will find a vassal state to marry you off to. After that, he will use the troops your mother left behind to become the ruler of the world, while you will be nothing more than an anonymous princess in the annals of history. Are you willing to accept that? Murongzhu's expression grew increasingly grim. Finally, she cut me off. Enough. Chu Yusu, are you trying to drive a wedge between my brother and me? Do you know that any one of the words you just spoke could get you killed 100 times over? With that, Mu Rongzhu turned her horse and rode away without looking back. I stood there, smiling. Yes, the words I spoke could have gotten me killed 100 times over. Yet she did not kill me. That alone was enough to prove it. She had fallen for me. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Before I knew it, it was the birthday banquet of Mu Rongjin, the young master of the Qiangrong tribe. Some eunuchs wanted to curry favor with him, so they specially gathered the female slaves from the southern Tang dynasty to rehearse a famous bamboo dance from Jiangnan to entertain Mu Rongjin on his birthday. Many of the girls refused. Murongjin is the enemy who killed our father and destroyed our country. How dare you make us dance for him? The eunuch's face turned grim. Disobedient slave girls will be beaten to death with horsewhips on the spot and dragged away to feed the wild dogs. I stepped forward in time and slipped a piece of gold into the eunuch's hand. Sir, please do not be angry. They are young and clumsy, they do not know how to dance. It is not boastful of me to say this, but the best bamboo branch dancer in the entire southern Tang capital is none other than myself. The eunuch was overjoyed and no longer pursued the matter with the other female slaves. instructing me to prepare for the performance. Before the grand banquet began, the eunuch brought me a set of cloud-patterned dance robes and a pair of embroidered dance shoes. If you can win the young master's favor, you will be well rewarded. After the eunuch left, the young girl who worked with me in the stables helped me change into the robes. She was the only daughter of Li Shangshu, the Minister of Rites, and had been taught poetry and military strategy by her father and brother since childhood. She was known as the most talented woman in the capital. After spending several months in the stables, she was emaciated, skin and bones. Even though she was on the brink of death, she wept for me. Princess Yusu, a princess of the imperial family, is going to dance to save us. I smiled and stroked her head. Don't cry. We won't have to endure this for much longer. Tonight, there will definitely be a turning point. Miss Li thought I was just comforting her. She nodded tearfully and helped me put on my shoes. But as soon as my foot entered the shoe, I winced in pain. When I pulled my foot out, there was a shiny silver needle buried in the shoe, already soaked in blood. Li girl gasped. What is this? I clenched my teeth. It's Yu He. She knew I was going to perform at Mu Rongjin's grand banquet. If I revealed my face at the banquet and stole the spotlight, it would be dangerous for her. Li girl looked at my blood-stained silk stockings. The wound is deep. Should the princess have it bandaged first? No. I stood up, lifting my skirt. I was actually worried that I wasn't getting enough attention. Now I should thank her. The strings of the huqin played, and the golden tent was filled with the sound of voices. The king of Qiangrong and Murongjin, father and son, sat at the highest position. By Murongjin's side was Yu He, his favored concubine. Among the guests, Murongzhu still wore red, drinking alone without speaking to anyone. I gathered my sleeves and stepped onto the stage, bowing gracefully. Yu Su of the Chu clan, dancing for the Qiangrong king and the young master. Yu He saw that I had actually gone up on stage and her face turned pale. Murongjin, however, looked at me with interest. Last time he punished me for Yu He, I was wearing coarse slave attire, head bowed, and did not catch his attention. But now, having dressed up carefully, he could see my face clearly. Yu He was vibrant and beautiful, while I was cold and aloof, two completely different impressions from Murongjin. He said with renewed interest. Then dance. If you dance well, there will be a generous reward. I shook my head. I cannot dance. Murongjin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. A hint of displeasure in his eyes. Are you mocking me? I lowered my eyes. This dance must be accompanied by a Jiangnan zither to begin. I have heard that among the Qiangrong people, only Princess Mu Rongzhu can play this zither. However, the princess is of noble birth, and I am merely a slave. I dare not ask. Mu Rongjin smiled. That's easy, sister. Go accompany her with a song. Mongolian Jinzhu suddenly raised her eyes. She coldly said, My royal brother is asking me to perform on stage with a slave? Her voice was so cold that the entire venue fell silent for a moment. Mongolian Jin felt his mood dampened. His eyes darkened, and his expression grew somber. He glanced at the Qiangrong king sitting beside him. The Qiangrong king waved his hand. It's your birthday, Genie. Why spoil the mood? Besides, I've never heard Zhuer play the zither before. This was clearly siding with Murongjini. Murongzhu's face turned red, then green, then white. In the end, under the gaze of everyone present, she had no choice but to stand up and take the ancient zither handed to her by the eunuch. The sound of the zither flowed like water. I swept my wide sleeves, my figure graceful and flowing, like the shadows of clouds and the ripples of water. Finally, the sound of the zither abruptly ceased with a sharp snap. It was Mu Rongzhu who had bitten her teeth and snapped the string. At the same moment, I collapsed to the ground. Blood spread from my shoes. seeping into the ground and forming a dark red circle. Jean was startled and stood up. What's going on? I bit my lip. This servant is clumsy. I accidentally injured my foot while practicing dance. But I wanted to dance for the young master. So I decided to endure the pain and come here. I even wrapped the wound with white silk. But I didn't expect. Before I could finish, Jean had already rushed forward and picked me up. I saw his face drain of color in an instant. Zhu, sitting beside him, quietly darkened her gaze. She looked at me, her eyes filled with an indescribable disappointment. Inside the golden tent, I was bathing. Tonight was the night I was to serve Jean. The servants all said that the young master might take both southern Tang princesses as concubines, which would also showcase the might of the Qiangrong tribe. I bathed slowly, and the water had grown cold, but I still did not emerge from the tub. I was waiting. Today's grand performance was all for one person. If she did not come, all my efforts would be in vain. Finally, the servants' voices echoed outside. Pay your respects to the princess. You may all withdraw. The curtain was lifted, and Zhu entered. Her brow seemed to be aflame. Chu Yusu, are you playing with me? When I asked you if you wanted to be my brother's concubine, you refused and spoke such lofty words. I thought you were a person of great ambition. Yet, less than half a month later, you came crawling back to dance for favor, dragging me along to shame myself. I truly misjudged you. I remained calm, smiling in the mist. The lesson I taught the princess tonight, has she learned it? Zhu froze. What? I stopped smiling, turning to look at her with a cold gaze. The princess has seen it. In your father's heart, your status is no better than that of a courtesan or a dancer. Zhu suddenly bit her lip tightly, as if she had been stabbed. Her hands gripped the reins tightly, trembling uncontrollably. For a moment, I suspected she wanted to kill me. But as a person from a fallen kingdom with no future, I had no choice but to fight to the death. Why did your father order you to perform for Jean? Because you're useless. You're a woman. Your future is either to be married off to another kingdom for political alliance or given to a minister to solidify his power. Your existence is solely to please men. On the other hand, your brother is useful. He just conquered the southern Tang kingdom, with great military achievements to his name. In the future, he will inherit the throne and become the ruler of the 16 western regions. So you must flatter him and make him happy. Even if... I exhaled softly. Even if you are superior to him in every way. Zhu's grip on the reins loosened. Her eyes turned red. Princess, you have little time left to decide. If I go to serve him tonight, from this day forward, I will be Jin's concubine and will never be able to assist you. I closed my eyes. Please, princess, think it through yourself. A long silence fell within the tent, until the commotion outside grew once more. Jean had arrived. He lifted the tent flap, impatiently urging me. Why aren't you ready yet? Then he turned to Zhu, his expression half surprised, half displeased, and said, Is the golden tent where you should be? Get out. Zhu's hands clenched tightly. The 12 golden tents were the most prestigious place in the Qiangrong tribe. The largest golden tent housed the Qiangrong king. The next tier housed the Qiangrong young master. And the remaining tents were occupied by the leaders of various tribes. Women were only allowed to enter wrapped in sheepskin during their nightly duties. And after their duties were done, they were wrapped in sheepskin and sent out. No woman could ever become the mistress of the golden tent. Even Zhu. If she wanted to live in the golden tent in the future, she would have to marry the chief of a tribe, serve him in his daily life, and bear his children. No one knew that she had once been the most proud granddaughter of the king of the Guyu kingdom. the natural-born military genius praised by all the Iron Cavalry, who had slain a wolf at 6, slaughtered a bear at 8, and delivered a message alone on horseback over 1,000 miles at 12, all of which would now be forgotten dust. Just as Jean was about to pick me up, Ju suddenly raised her horsewhip. She lashed it down with all her strength, striking between me and Jean. Jean was startled. "Have you lost your mind?" Ju smiled. There was something different in her eyes. "I want this slave," she said, pointing at me. "Brother, give her to me. What do you say?" Ju traded me for a large crossbow and a black iron tiger-headed spear. As we emerged from the tent, a maid whispered, "The young master has wanted those 2 treasures for ages. But the princess refused to give them. Now she's using them to trade for a slave." Ju said, "Enough." The maid fell silent immediately. Ju turned to look at me. "Military advisor. You heard that too, right? That bow was left to me by my grandfather. I traded it for you. Don't make me feel like it wasn't worth it." A few days later, he heard about how I had been taken away by Ju from Jin's tent. She didn't know about the alliance between Ju and me. So when she arrived, she had a look of anticipation on her face. "How about it, sister? I told you not to force yourself into the spotlight. At the grand banquet, you even dragged Ju to play the zither for you. You've really angered this female tyrant. Look. She dared to ruin your night of rest in front of everyone, forcing you to come to her tent as a stable hand instead of letting you become Jin's concubine. To avoid suspicion, after being taken back to the tent by Ju, I presented myself to others as a stable slave. However, in private, Ju referred to me as her military strategist. She divided her personal guards into 2 groups, with her leading one and me leading the other. But he was unaware of these matters. She stroked her belly and smiled sweetly. "Oh, I have some good news to tell my sister. I'm pregnant. If we have a child, he will be Jin's eldest son and may one day become the new young master of the Shuangwen tribe." I straightened up and looked at he indifferently. "You're thinking too much. Jin will soon take new concubines. Those new concubines are noble women from various clans. While you," I whispered, "you're just a slave of a fallen kingdom. The child of a slave of a fallen kingdom will get nothing." He stood up, her face flushing with anger. "Shut up. You're just jealous. You're jealous that I can become a favored concubine. Jealous that I can live in luxury." She picked up the horsewhip, ready to strike me. However, the whip was caught by someone. Ju, dressed in red, spoke calmly in my tent. "Whoever dares to strike me, do you think I'm dead?" He was deeply afraid of Ju, and the whip slipped from her hands. She glared at me with hatred and turned to leave. Ju sat down beside me, took a roasted lamb leg, tore off half, and gave it to me. "Your sister and you don't seem like you were raised by the same father." I sighed. To be precise, she was raised by our father, while I was raised on my own. "I see." Ju nodded in realization. "I knew it. She looks more like your father, the fallen king, than you do." After that, he and I were both very busy. Just like in my previous life, Jin began taking concubines. New Shuangwen noblewomen arrived at Jin's side like a succession of blooming flowers. He, pregnant and alone, became the common enemy of all the Shuangwen noblewomen. She spent her days fighting with one and then another, her complexion growing paler by the day, her entire body exhausted. Yet she forced herself to maintain the appearance of her luxurious attire, while Jin was busy taking concubines. Ju and I weren't idle either. In the tent, we lit a candle and studied until late into the night. Ju listened as I spoke of the principles of governance in the Central Plains. of how water can both support and overturn a boat, and of how the people's hearts determine the fate of the realm. During breaks, Mu Rongzhu would also share what she knew with me. She spoke of the tears of women sending their husbands to battle, of the wails of parents when their sons' bodies were returned, and of the mother horse licking her dead foal's body, refusing to leave for a long time. As I watched her expression in the lamplight, I felt she would be a ruler completely different from her brother. Princess Mu Rong, what is your philosophy of governance? Mu Rongzhu was startled by my question and paused. The way of ruling? Your brother's way of ruling is to conquer the 4 seas and become the overlord of the world. And you? Mu Rongzhu remained silent for a moment. She said, I don't know. I only hope that women like my mother no longer have to marry someone they don't love because of defeat in battle. I hope the herders can graze their sheep in peace, dance around campfires, and not be displaced. I hope parents can grow old with their children by their side, that wives can grow old with their husbands, and that children can play without worry. I smiled gently and bowed deeply. Princess Mu Rong has already understood the deepest truth of ruling. There is nothing more I can teach the princess. In September, the autumn wind swept across the grasslands. 2 major events occurred. The first was that the king of Qiangrong fell seriously ill and fell into a coma. All the tribal leaders gathered outside the golden tent, waiting for the old king to pass away and the new king to ascend the throne. The second was that Yu He miscarried. It was unclear who had harmed her. The noblewomen of the Qiangrong tribe from the 16 western regions each had their own schemes. I couldn't protect Yu He from them in my previous life. And neither could this life's Yu He. Just like me in my previous life, Yu He not only miscarried but was also poisoned. However, at the critical moment when the Qiangrong king was about to die and Mu Rongjin was about to ascend the throne, her situation didn't attract anyone's attention. Mu Rongjin was busy with state affairs and didn't even bother to visit Yu He after her miscarriage. Mu Rongzhu and I did catch a glimpse of Yu He from afar. She had grown very thin, and a breeze seemed enough to knock her over. Yu He noticed me and bit her lip. Chuyusu, have you come to mock me? Let me tell you, Mu Rongjin is about to ascend the throne. Even without a child, I am still the empress of the Qiangrong. Mu Rongzhu and I looked at her with pity and turned away. We had more important things to do. I have already sounded out the 16 tribes of the western regions. The Guyu kingdom will definitely stand behind me. And in addition, 4 other tribes are willing to help me. Of the remaining 11, 6 are firmly loyal to Mu Rongjin, and the other 5 are small countries that will follow whichever way the wind blows. They will recognize whoever is named in my father's will. Mu Rongzhu whispered to me. I nodded. If it comes to a fight, how likely do you think the princess is to defeat Mu Rongjin? Mao Rongzhu's eyes darkened. 50%. My troops are more elite than Mao Rongjin's. And we have the iron shield formation left by the Guyu kingdom. But in terms of numbers, I'm far behind him. I whispered. If the princess still wants more troops, they can be arranged. At that moment, we were standing on the horse field, bathed in moonlight, with a sea of soldiers stretching out before us. The iron cavalry of the Guyu kingdom. This force was the strongest cavalry in the western regions. Years ago, Mu Rongzhu's mother had brought them with her when she married the old Qiangrong king. After she was murdered, the tiger token that controlled this force fell into Mu Rongjin's hands. However, Mu Rongjin could not command this force. Only Mu Rongzhu could. Though she did not possess the military token, all the soldiers of the Guyu kingdom recognized their princess. Mu Rongzhu whispered. All the Guyu cavalry are here. The rest are Mu Rongjin's men. Within this Qiangrong capital, which faction would dare to support me? Suddenly, she seemed to think of something, her eyes widening. I looked at her and whispered the answer. The southern Tang people. As my words fell, one slave after another emerged from the darkness and formed ranks on the horse field. Under the moonlight, They stood silent yet brimming with hidden strength. There were 8,000 southern Tang slaves in this Qiangrong capital city. Morongzhu looked at me, her eyes reddening. Even if there are 8,000 soldiers, where are the generals? All the generals of the southern Tang were killed by Morongjin back then. Morongzhu was correct. To ensure the southern Tang would never rise again, Morongjin had all the military generals executed after capturing the southern Tang capital. But I unfolded the roster. The daughter of General Xin Biao, Xin Changning, present. The daughter of General Xia Lang, Xia Mingyue, present. The daughter of General Fu Huai, Fu Ruiying, present. The daughter of General Geng Songxing, Geng Yanyan, present. One after another, the girls knelt down in the darkness of the night. They were all daughters from military families. Their fathers and brothers already dead. The last remnants of their military lineage flowed through their veins. They could mount a horse, wield a sword, and fight to the death. Do you see, princess? I whispered. The generals of the southern Tang cannot be eradicated. Mao Rongzhu lowered her eyes, looking at these female slaves. She turned to me and said, Chu Yusu, you, and all of you southern Tang people, have truly not disappointed me. That night, an extraordinary phenomenon occurred. A nine-tailed divine bird of the Chang tribe soared above Mu Rongzhu's tent. Circling for a long time, the state priest ascended a high platform, divined the future with a tortoise shell, then shook his white beard and left 16 words, "The imperial star has fallen. The female star chases the moon. Divine authority is bestowed upon the ruler. The princess ascends the throne." As these 16 words spread throughout the capital of the Qiangrong kingdom, Mu Rongzhu and I were galloping toward the king's tent. In the blink of an eye, we arrived outside the king's tent. The attendants were dozing off. The king had been ill for so long that he was clinging to life, and everyone was exhausted. Suddenly, the sound of hooves startled him awake. When he opened his eyes, a gleaming blade was already pressed against his throat. Step aside. Ironclad cavalry surrounded the tent, and Mu Rongzhu, clad in red, charged in alone. The Qiangrong king had already fallen into a faint sleep, but the noise startled him awake. Weakly, he asked, "Who is it?" Mao Rongzhu, armed with a sword, sat cross-legged before his bed. The Qiangrong king looked at Mao Rongzhu's face and exclaimed, "Nazhan, you're Nazhan." Mao Rongzhu's eyes darkened, and she whispered, "Father, I am Nashan's daughter, Zhuer." The Qiangrong king finally recognized the person before him, his tone immediately turning displeased. "What are you doing here? And you're carrying a sword? Haven't I told you before? You're of marriageable age now. You need to put an end to this violent nature of yours. Otherwise, your brother will have a hard time arranging a marriage for you." Mao Rongzhu smiled. She spoke slowly and clearly. "I have come to ask my father to pass the throne to me." No one knew how shocked and enraged the Qiangrong king was that night. "Wretch! Wretch!" He pointed at Mu Rongzhu's face with trembling fingers. "What nonsense are you talking about? This is absolutely impossible. You're just a woman. You should marry properly. Do you really want to become the king of the 16 tribes of the western regions?" Mu Rongzhu looked out the window at the moon. She smiled softly. "Yes. I want to be the queen of the 16 tribes of the western regions." The king of Qiangrong was speechless. Mongzhu turned her head and looked at him. "Actually, I once thought of accepting my fate. When my mother died, I was only 6 years old. I was terrified, knowing that no one in this capital city of Qiangrong would protect me anymore. My father and brother treated me like an object. Though I was a princess, I had no say in anything. I acted so defiantly and defied my brother. But I knew he was the heir apparent. I could never defeat him. But..." Mu Rongzhu smiled, glancing at her father on the sickbed. I met someone who made me realize I shouldn't accept my fate. Since I've decided not to accept my fate, there's no turning back. Father, forgive me. Morning Pearl waved her hand, and 2 ironclad soldiers stepped forward, one on each side, and placed the Qiangrong king on the already written edict. He pressed his handprint and sealed it with the jade seal bearing the clan crest. Thank you, Father, for passing the throne to me. Mao Rongzhu put away the edict, ignoring the Qiangrong king, who was so enraged he could barely breathe, and left the palace. Chu Yusu. I've got it. Mao Rongzhu rushed out. She ran toward me. With the edict, the remaining 5 clans will recognize me. Even if they don't help me, they won't help my brother either. This brings my chances of victory to nearly 90%. She suddenly stopped, because she noticed that I was standing far away from her, holding the reins of the snow dragon full. All the southern Tang slaves were standing behind me, also holding the reins of their horses. Princess, congratulations, I said softly. Everything I could do to help you, I have done. Though we part ways, our hearts remain connected. Chu Yusu, you. I mounted my horse and galloped away. All the southern Tang people followed behind me. This was the entire plan, to support Mu Rongzhu and aid her palace coup. Then, on this night when she and Mu Rongjin must inevitably clash and the Qiangrong faction descends into chaos, we would depart with all the southern Tang people. This was our only chance. We could finally go home. Yuhi sat in the carriage, watching the flames of battle rise outside. Nearly 9,000 southern Tang people had left, forming an enormous convoy divided into 3 parts. The vanguard, led by Chu Yusu herself, was responsible for clearing a path home. The middle section consisted of carriages carrying the elderly, the weak, and the injured. The rear guard was responsible for covering their retreat. Yuhi was in the middle carriage. She couldn't remember how she had gotten on the carriage, only that she had begged Mu Rongjin to come see her one last time last night when the poison had taken effect and she was in excruciating pain. Mu Rongjin had indeed come, but after glancing at her waxen, emaciated face, he lost all interest and turned to go to his newly-wed concubine. As he was leaving, an eunuch asked him, "Young master, this is truly heartbreaking for consort Yuhi. She is, after all, a princess of the southern Tang dynasty. If she were to flee to another country and speak out of turn, it would not be good for our Qiangrong kingdom." Mu Rongjin gave a cold laugh. Flee? A little dog that eats at our table? Where do you think she can go? After Mu Rongjin left, less than half an hour later, the sound of fighting suddenly echoed from the distance. Eunuchs and female slaves rushed in with news. First saying that Princess Mu Rongzhu had rebelled, then that the southern Tang people had rebelled. Yuhi was confused about who had rebelled, as she was in so much pain that she was about to faint. Someone rushed in and forced her onto a carriage. When she came to, she was already 300 li away from the capital of Qiangrong. Yuhi gradually pieced together what had happened. Her older sister, Chu Yusu, had supported Princess Mu Rongzhu in her power struggle with the Qiangrong concubines. Then, during the fratricidal conflict among the Qiangrong siblings, had fled with the surviving southern Tang people. The only thing Yuhi couldn't figure out was why Yusu had brought her along. There was so much hatred between the sisters, spanning 2 lifetimes. Chu Yusu had already shown mercy by not killing her. There was no need for her to care about her survival. Perhaps she was simply afraid that leaving a member of the royal family behind in Qiangrong would lead to future gossip. The sounds of battle outside the carriage grew louder, accompanied by constant screams and the splatter of blood. A scout reported that Mu Rongjin and Mu Rongzhu had reached a temporary truce, agreeing to unite against their common enemy. They were closing in. The pursuing troops were getting closer, and the rear guard had been nearly wiped out. Ahead lay the carriages carrying the elderly, the weak, and the injured. In the same carriage as Yuhi was the sickly young daughter of Li Shangshu. Back in the stable, Yuhi had once given her a whip. But now, the young lady drew her sword. Listen to me. If this continues, we will all die. We must stop Mu Rongjin's forces here. There's a narrow valley ahead. I'll stop the cart here to block the way. You run ahead and find Princess Yusu and the others. Yuhi stared at the 13-year-old girl in disbelief. What about you? Someone has to stop them. The girl said. I learned a little swordplay from my father. The carriage was getting closer to the valley entrance. Yuhi suddenly burst into tears. Don't cry. I'm not trying to protect you. I'm just protecting the Chu family. Li said. My father once committed a great crime. And it was your grandfather who saved him. Grandfather? Yes. After that, my father told me that we are subjects of the Southern Tang dynasty and must remain loyal to it for life. Chu Yuha looked at the sword in Li's hand and suddenly remembered what her sister had told her. A princess who eats the people's food must also take on the responsibilities of a princess in times of crisis. But she had never understood this truth in her entire life. Now, perhaps it was already too late. Chu Yuha suddenly pulled back the curtain and jumped off the carriage. Li girl was startled and rushed forward. But she couldn't grab Chu Yuhua's skirt. Go find Chu Yushu, Yuhua said softly. Tell her thank you. And, in the next life, we won't be sisters anymore. The carriage carried Li girl away at full speed. Yuhua turned around and walked step by step toward the pursuing troops. In truth, she also wanted to go home. But it was impossible now. Along the way, there were many dead Southern Tang people, just like her, who could never return home. Yuhua found a warhorse that had lost its master and picked up a bow. The pursuing troops had already arrived. Their numbers unknown. A dark, dense mass. Many soldiers saw Yuhi, but they didn't rush to act. She was wearing the clothes of a Qiangrong noblewoman, and they couldn't determine her identity, fearing they might mistakenly kill a Qiangrong noble. Yuhi mounted the horse, drew her bow, and began to charge toward the thousands of soldiers. She could ride a horse and shoot an arrow. She was the most favored princess in the entire Southern Tang imperial palace. And all her masters were the best. But she had only used those skills for playing polo, hunting wild rabbits in the animal park, and seeking pleasure, never for anything truly useful. This was her last chance to prove herself as a true princess. Mao Rongjin stood at the front of the ranks. He spotted Yuhi charging toward them on her horse from afar. He smiled. She's back after all. The Southern Tang probably couldn't keep her. Like watching a spoiled little dog that had run away from home and was now reluctantly returning. Yuhi drew closer. Her skirt fluttered in the wind, and her blood-stained face was strikingly beautiful. Then she drew her bow and nocked an arrow. Murongjin froze, for he realized that the arrow seemed to be aimed at him. Before any of the Qiangrong soldiers could react, the arrow had already flown out, piercing Mu Rongjin's eye socket. Yuhi burst into laughter. She tore off her Qiangrong noblewoman's clothes and draped herself in a tattered Southern Tang Bao flag. I am Princess Chu Yuha of the Southern Tang dynasty, she shouted to the thousands of soldiers before her. Monk Jin covered his eye socket and screamed in agony. Kill her! A shower of arrows rained down on Yuhi. Yuhi raised her head. She could no longer see clearly. All she saw was the scene from the Southern Tang palace. At that time, she was still a child, playing in the imperial garden when she met a beautiful girl who gave her a lotus root cake. Yuhi asked, "Who are you?" The girl replied, "I am your elder sister." "Look, older sister, I didn't lose to you." The Qiangrong soldiers stared in shock at the figure before them. She was pinned to the ground by thousands of arrows. This treacherous, servile princess of a fallen kingdom died standing upright. Chu Yuha was the daughter of Emperor Ai of the Southern Tang dynasty and Empress Song. Born into a noble family, she was spoiled and pampered from childhood. Selfish and foolish, and spent her entire life as a parasite feeding on the grains in the granary. Only in death did she act like a true princess. Riding alone on horseback to shoot the Qiangrong general in battle, and then dying in the chaos of the army. At the age of 16, Li girl brought me the news of Yu Hua's death. I stared out the window, standing there motionless for a long time. So long that a deputy officer came to report, Princess Mu Rongjin has been severely wounded, and the troops are in disarray. We can no longer pursue them. But 100 miles ahead, there are iron cavalry blocking the way. I immediately understood. It was Murongzhu. Miss Li's face turned pale. She whispered, Murongzhu's troops are more elite than Murongjin's. We've already lost nearly half our men. If we face the iron cavalry. I knew what she was going to say. People around us stepped forward one after another. Princess, we're not afraid. We've never regretted following you. Even if most of us die, some will return to our homeland. On the last night, we lit a bonfire, gathered around it, sang songs of the Southern Tang dynasty, and danced to their dances. Everyone exchanged tokens, vowing that whoever returned would place the token on their family's grave. Suddenly, a messenger arrived. Princess Mu Rongzhu has arrived. I met Mu Rongzhu. In battle, commanders never personally serve as envoys. But Mu Rongzhu came anyway. We stood together on a high ridge, looking down at the men and women singing and dancing below. Mu Rongzhu said, Are these the last of the Southern Tang people? Yes. So few. Mu Rongzhu murmured. Indeed. Very few. I said. Your princess's iron cavalry could easily devour us. But as long as one Southern Tang person remains alive, the Southern Tang will not perish. Murongzhu smiled. She said, Chu Yusu, do you think I traveled 800 li at night to exterminate you? No. I only came to see you one last time. I raised my eyes and looked at her. Mao Rongzhu curved the corners of her mouth. My brother is not dead. Though he has only one eye left. He still holds the 8 tribes of the western regions. In the coming decades, he and I will have much to contend with. There are many things I still need to learn from you. In battle, you are my equal. In governance, I am your inferior. The one speaking was my younger sister. Yu He. Mongolian Zhu smiled and patted my shoulder. Chu Yusu. I'll say it again. Don't let me down. The Qiangrong troops retreated. The Mongolian Zhu princess, who always wore a red robe, departed as swiftly as she had arrived. She rushed back to the capital of Qiangrong in a single day, carrying the late king's edict and the diviner's predictions, and became the first female emperor of Qiangrong. Her brother, Murongjin, proclaimed himself emperor in a secondary capital, and the siblings divided the western regions into southern Qiangrong and northern Qiangrong. 2 years later, Murongjin's eye injury recurred, and with no cure available, he died from his illness. Murongzhu seized the opportunity to take control of her brother's forces and unified the 16 tribes of the western regions. In the same year, Princess Chu Yusu, who had been regent in the southern Tang for 3 years, officially ascended the throne, becoming the first empress of the southern Tang. Li Shijun was appointed as minister of the secretariat, Xin Changning as general of the chariot and cavalry, Xian Mingyue as general of the army, Fu Ruiying as commander of the 9 Gates infantry, and Geng Yanyan as commander of the vanguard camp. Chu Yuho was posthumously honored as princess of the state and buried in a tomb adorned with imperial robes. For the next 100 years, the 2 empresses of the southern Tang and the Qiangrong never met again. However, trade routes were opened between the 2 sides, and they exchanged advanced technologies. The Qiangrong sold horses and sheep to the southern Tang, while the southern Tang exported tea and silk to the western regions. Thus, the people lived in peace and prosperity, and the land was at peace. The end.